My project is a 501c4 nonprofit organization called Erase Races, the American Unity Movement. And our objective is over the next 3 years, 2.5 years actually, is to tour the country. And as I've met some of you, and as I've met people across the country so far, my focus is really now on networking, because what I've realized is that there's so many people out there who have this desire this gift from God to do these things. That is, bring about unity and racial reconciliation. And I tell everybody that one of the biggest issues is that Satan has tried to separate everybody so that we don't hear about the great works that everybody's doing along the same lines. And so as I go to the different cities, I will be doing mostly a lot of networking, and then we will implement our strategy, which is where we go to cities over the next 2 years, and we put on forums and events and activities to simply bring people together. We'll have community service projects, we'll have church activities, things, bringing people together along. We have one big event called a family reunion that we'll have in each city. And what we're doing now, and what I'll start next week, is I talked to Elmo earlier, I'll be in Baton Rouge next week and meet with him, is that we're going to identify the people that would would work with us on some of these things. In a lot of cases, it will be my Erase Races personnel working with things that are already happening in those cities. And in some cases, it'll be the opposite, where we bring in people and work with organizations that are there already doing these things. So in the big picture, we're networking all the people who have a heart to do this thing around the country. Ours is called Erase Race because we believe we got to break down all the barriers demographically. And doing that, and then we can start working together and moving forward in this country rather than fighting each other. So that's the objective of Erase Races. And I'll make sure you all have the information on the website. We've got a lot of information that you can look at out there on the web and find out what we're doing and where we are.
And tell us the name of your website again.
It's eraseraces.com.
.com.
Eraseraces.com.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, okay. I was born a poor black child. No, all right. So I was in the Marine Corps. I'm from Prairie View, Texas, and so Prairie View A&M. My dad taught at Prairie View. My mom was a school teacher. My dad's 91. My mom passed at 82 about 5 years ago. And but I grew up there, and if you've been watching any of kind of racial things, we had the Sandra Bland, which happened in Prairie View. That was right. It's like 500 meters from the restaurant that I owned at the time, and so we kind of know the whole story on that. But I grew up there in Prairie View. Then went to school. I didn't go to Prairie View A&M. I went to school at North Texas, and then joined the Marine Corps and did 20 years as a Marine, and so. Got out of that and then went into school teaching. And so I spent the last 12 years as a high school teacher. Loved that. And the only reason I'm out of that is because God said go, because I love that and would still be there. Fought it for a while. And then I said, okay, I got to do what God says do. And so I founded this nonprofit. In the meantime, got a couple of master's degrees. And that kind of was the impetus when working on one of my master's degrees. I had to do this project about transforming a culture and how you do that. And that's how I came up with this idea that if we did away with race, we would transform our culture for the better, and we would realize that we're all one, made in the image of God. So we kind of been pushing along those lines, and I've got a small staff around the country, and that'll probably grow as we go and make contacts. But those are my paid staff. I got a guy in California, a lady in Florida, and then some people here in Texas. And so that's our team, and that's what we're setting out to do over the next couple of years to try to make some change in this country. Change for unity. The next thing I've got this, I've told my students I'm going to hold character camps. So, because like I said, when I was in college, I played football. And so every summer I realized how they have these camps, and these people go and they get their kids in these camps. Parents pay exorbitant amounts of money to put their kids in these camps. And it's usually all about physical stuff. Yeah, they'll get some coaching, but mine is going to be specifically character. It's going to be character camp.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Man.
Mm-hmm.
I need to get you in touch with Jan Mitchell that runs camps all summer, starting next week here outside of town on her own property.
Oh, wow.
To the Lord now. It's not her own now. But they incorporate character in what they do, but I bet she would love to have you come out there and do some lessons and character training.
Oh, yeah, and I got tons of them. And also the name of our organization, Erase Races. Erase stands for Eradicate Race and Strengthen Ethics. And it really is about We need a better sense of character. Let's get rid of color because character matters more than color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was said by a famous person, wasn't it?
Yeah, I can't remember that guy's name. He was somebody famous. Kind of confused. Yeah.
We have some signs to go on our vehicle when we enter the local parades with that quote on it.
Carlen,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about how you went from where you were to where you are now with Erase Race. Some of the beginnings of that.
Yeah, okay, well, I told you I was working on this master's degree, and I had this concept that I had to do for academic purposes. Then as I looked at that, I said, hey, this actually looks like it could work, and it's real. And so so that was maybe about eight or 9 years ago. And so then I start feeling that, so way before all this animosity started between when they started saying, white cop shoots a black teenager and all that stuff was happening, then God had told me this thing, it talked about, unity thing. And when that started happening, so and every time one of those hit the news, it's almost like God was saying, hey, what about what I told you? Hey, what about what I told you? And so I started telling my wife, I said, I think I started blaming myself every time one of those things happened and it hit, because I said, man, I got to go and there's somebody out there who's got to bring harmony. And so I told my wife I was going to leave teaching, and she's like, hey, that's income. What are you going to do for income? I mean, hey, I will provide, My wife's an attorney, by the way, and so she's the one who keeps me in check. Jolene can tell you she's the one who keeps me in check because she feels like I would do everything. My wife was an attorney, and she at one point she was working at a barbecue restaurant. She said, I didn't get a degree to sit behind be a cashier at a barbecue restaurant. So she's always worried about what's going to be my next thing. But she really understands the calling here for me to go out and do this. And then all of my experiences, this is the thing I understood, Carlton, that all of my experiences in life had been things that brought me to this point. That's when you understand when it's God's call, when all the things in your history begin to make sense. I kind of look at the whole Joseph story kind of from my life, because I've had so many of those instances like that now in my life that where all those things began to make sense, and things that happened in my life, pointed to, well, this is why you needed that to happen, because you're going to be the guy who does this. Yeah. So, from my dad, like I said, he's 91, and I stay with my dad on Sundays. I asked my dad, and so I've been questioning him about a lot of the racial things, and I asked him about what was your first time you integrated with the other races as you grew up, and he's 91. He said it's never happened. Wow. Prairie View is, of course, black town, and it's never happened. He's worked there at Prairie View. He's never been in an integrated environment.
Wow,
that was amazing to me because it's amazing, but it made me understand his viewpoints on things. Sure. So some of the things that he says, I said if there was such a thing as a racist, it would be my dad. But he's not seen as a racist, but it's just understanding. And this is the thing I try to tell these young people, the Black Lives Matter movement, these people today, they don't understand the historical context for people who grew up in that time. And so those people who are 90 years old and above, they use terms because that's what they've had 80 years, 90 years of that stuff in their head. That's the way they speak. And it doesn't say, I said, so you got to see beyond the words into people's hearts. Yep. The big thing I think we got to do in this country. So I built a staff, like I said, over the last 6 months. And so my staff is, as we go around, we're going to basically try to connect with people, like I said, like you, and then begin saying, what are your ideas? Because we don't think we have all the answers. We believe that the answers are going to come in the relationships that we build with the people that we're going to meet.
Yeah. It's interesting with your dad that he never did have opportunity to interact. I think one of the things that becomes a real challenge for all of us, there's a road that got us all where we are. It's interesting that you talked about Joseph, because so many times I know we have met over the years individuals whose testimonies have been very similar to ours. And obviously there are many, many other kinds. But that's always a road that God uses to bring us to this point. And I think in the work that I know that we've been doing, and in many cases in the call that we've had, we're dealing with people who obviously have a history and a background and a road that got them to that place. So the starting place for people is so different. And I think that's one of the things that we're seeing. I know in our particular case, especially with the younger ones, millennials, Gen Xers and Gen Yers, they have no sense of history. Mm-hmm. So no appreciation for why things are the way that they are. So consequently, in many cases, they'll just tend to reject, much of what gets put before them and start at that place without giving thought to, well, how do we get to this place? And so I think that's a very important thing. So it's interesting that your dad is starting from a place that a lot of folks who came up north. I just realized earlier today I'm the only Yankee here.
Hey. I grew up in Illinois, so I'm still a Yankee.
Okay. Well, everybody else is below the Mason-Dixon. And so, but I realized that in saying that, my parents are some of those who came north with the Great Migration, in the 40s and 50s. They all grew up in the Deep South, and so they carried a profound sense of all of that. Mm-hmm. But my grandchildren have no sense of that at all.
Exactly.
And yet and still, both groups really need to come to a place where there's some commonality of vision and understanding, because the approach is very different for each. So it's just really interesting to hear your dad's story.
What's the northernmost place you're going to, Carlen, on this trip?
Oh, well, on this particular leg, so we're doing June, we're doing the Southeast United States. We're off July because my wife and I are going to Nigeria on a mission trip. And then we start back in August. And I think we do the Midwest, then we do the Northeast.
Wow. And
then we do the West Coast. And so all of it will be done by November. So August we'll be doing Midwest, then we'll do Northeast. So I'll be coming to Ohio. We'll be in Cleveland, probably. That's probably October time frame. Richmond, Virginia is probably September or so. So yeah, we'll be going where everybody is.
What's the objective?
The objective, well, what we're doing on this part of the tour, what we call this tour, is networking. We're going and finding people like you all and saying, here's what we hope to do in a year from now or a year and a half from now. And how can you assist, or how can we assist you in what you're doing? So we're finding like-minded people doing the same thing. We've got this cause for unity and racial reconciliation, and saying, how can we help you, or how can you help us? How can we work together to make this happen? We've got a template of events that we're scheduled to host, that we'd like to host when we go to a city, but we're really going to leave that up to the people in that city that we're working with to determine what actually happens. So we've got some awards, dinners, and things where we recognize people in the community who are doing great things. And we've got community service projects because we think we need to work together, start working across demographic lines, start working together. We'll have a big family reunion picnic where we'll get some vendors to come in. Plus, we'll have people just hanging out together with each other. Relationship building is what we're going to call that, relationship building. And so, and then we want to have like some type of concert, especially some of the churches might have, musicals or things like that where we can come and worship together. We went to an event in Dallas with Project Unity is what it's called. And so everybody's got a different name. They've got Third Option in California. You've got Project Unity in Dallas. You've got the One Race movement in Atlanta. So you've got all these different things. And that's where our big thing is, bringing all these people together. But the Project Unity in Dallas had this thing called Together We Dine. And they had facilitators. And what happened was they had people, and they had every ethnicity, background, religious background. They had Muslims, Jews, and just different ethnic groups. You sit around a table, and they would have a facilitator. And as you ate, then they had these questions, and you would dialogue about these issues, about why you feel this way about race and different people. They call it Together We Dine. And so that was a very nice event because, you got to start discussing these things, talking about them. So we plan on doing that at one of our awards things called Dinner and Dialogue. So, because, people come together and eat. That's a big fellowship thing, to eat together. We can eat together, we can talk together, then we can start working some things out. So, just some of the things we're doing. And like I said, a lot of this will be when we sit down and talk to people, then it's going to go beyond us, because these are just ideas that we had. What we really want to do is sit down with people like Elmo, and we sit down find out what kind of things, what have you been thinking about? What's on your mind? 'Cause that's what we really understand is that God's given a lot of people this stuff in their hearts and in their spirits. And when we start talking, it's going to open up and go, oh, yeah, well, that's what God is saying we need to do here. Oh, man, I just say that, you know, and this is my prayer, you know, even though we are looking at that, you know, I thank Janine and Tom for having me here and just for the relationship that we built many, many years ago.
Amen.
And that has brought us to this place, because this is the thing. And as I go and I do a lot of mentoring to younger men, usually in their 20s and 30s, whatever. And I talk to them about the need to have men like you all are now in my life, you know, where I can get it from people older than me who have wisdom and knowledge. And when I sit and listen to people like you, I could sit here all day and listen. I know y'all got things to do, but I just really want to thank God that you all and know that you're having an impact on me. And you'll see as I go forth and do some things, it will be because of the things that you said and the way that you've impacted my life. So I just want to thank you all for this opportunity.
Amen.
We've been praying for you. We've been asking for the newer, other generations to come.
Somebody has been, because it's way bigger than me. Somebody.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.